30 seconds. We are live.
All right.
Good evening. Welcome to the Elyria City Council meeting for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, I'd ask the Safety Service Director, the birthday boy, Mr. Brubaker, to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the
Flag
flag
of
of
the
the
United States of America,
to
and to the republic
which it stands,
for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
justice for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Brubaker. Good evening. I hope everyone's doing well. Mr. Clerk, I have roll call, please.
Sir. Mr. Callahan,
Here.
Mr. Sarah,
Here.
Mr. Oswald,
Here.
Mr. Baird,
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Tolet,
Here.
Mrs. Simmons,
here,
Mrs. Davis,
here,
Mrs. Keys,
here,
Mr. Jesse,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
all present.
Public hearings.
There are none.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah,
Second.
second by Mr. Tolet. Any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
aye,
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield?
Mr. President, Mayor Whitfield contacted me. He was on the CD call and got called away to something. He may join us later, but he is not currently with us.
Okay. With that, I'll lead to you, Mr. Brubaker, Safety Service Director.
Great, thanks, Mr. President. Just wanted to give you a quick update on the snowfall that we got and the results of the team. We did make some changes to how we were operating and when we were going out. I met with Preston and Keenan earlier this week, our street supervisors, and we kind of put a plan together that we knew there was 2 rounds of snow coming. So yesterday, we obviously had the big trucks out, and we also put out the secondaries to try to get ahead of the big storm that came. They went out yesterday and worked from noon until about 9 doing the secondaries. They went home, and then we brought them back. We were going to bring them back at 4. We brought them back at 3 this morning. With the Republic not having their landfill open, we were concerned about where we're going to pick up trash, where we not. And we decided, since we were already a day behind, we were going to go ahead and pick it up, but that also posed a problem for our garbage trucks. So we brought the teams in a little bit earlier. We had them focus on the west side to start, where the sanitation trucks were going to go. And that worked out pretty well. And as we got into later in the morning, we were able to spread the teams out. I do know that, and I heard some conversation, there are likely and will be a few streets that got missed. Please understand that the team will be, if you send those to me or Preston, they will get those cleaned up tomorrow after the guys have a fresh night of rest. I can tell you that there was a lot of men and women that put in a lot of time to get these streets cleared, and I know they're tired. We even had department heads out plowing today to keep up on it. So I really give kudos to Preston and Keenan. All of our departments had a hand in it. Sam Jacobs from Water Pumping even gave us a hand with a couple people. And honestly, the reason we're able to be as efficient as we are is because the residents passed issue 6 twice now, and we were able to buy new pickup trucks, which means more trucks on the road, less trucks in the shop. And the employees are taking care of the equipment. So again, kudos to our maintenance team, as well as Preston and Keenan and all the employees that put in a lot of work over the last 24 to 48 hours. Hopefully, we're not getting anything Thursday and the Friday. I've seen something that we may get a little bit, but I've heard that's been canceled. But outside of that, again, the teams did great. And again, there's going to be some that might get missed. They will get those tomorrow. In fact, they'll be out cleaning up some of the streets again tomorrow. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Very good. Mr. Jesse?
Hi, Mr. President, through you. Again, Kevin, kudos to you and the team. I was in Amherst twice today, and when I got back to the border of Elyria, the streets were so much better in Elyria than they were in Amherst.
Any other questions for Mr. Brubaker? Mr. Sarah?
I also want to give kudos, but the one question I would have, I know enforcement on the parking ban streets was talked about. Did we have to have any vehicles towed?
No, Mr. President, through you to Mr. Sarah, I'm not aware of any that we had to have towed. I do know that throughout the snowstorm, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Tanner, they kind of split who's going to be the man in charge, if you will, during the event. And they were all three advised if there was a problem, they were to contact dispatch directly. I know I was in communication with Chief Whiteley and with Captain Hammonds. I've not heard of any that were towed. So I don't know that answer. I can follow up with Preston and Keenan tomorrow. I'm not sure if the chief would know that either.
Thank you.
Question?
Mr. Oswald?
I guess, thank you, Mr. President. I don't know who can maybe answer this, but why don't we have a parking ban on all streets? It's because like where I live, I know many cars were on the street and it just creates havoc for these drivers. Why are we just specifying certain streets? Why can't we just say parking ban for the whole city when we get to a situation like this? Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I can tell you the ordinance reads what it reads. That's what we have to follow. However, Mr. Oswald, in my meeting last Tuesday with Mr. Curtis and Mr. Williams, because we have some new developments, a couple of things that we talked about was going into late summer, early fall, we're going to revisit all of what our primaries are because we have schools that are closing and schools that are opening. So that's going to change that. There's some streets that have gotten salted and plowed for the last 60 years because they were in a schools area. They likely next year will not fall into that category. So we are going to review our primaries and what that looks like. We're going to review our policy on our snow ban parking. But to answer your question directly, to make that a blanket, I don't know that we can do that because we have a lot of streets in several of our neighborhoods. I'll speak specifically to the south side that don't have a lot of driveways. Some houses don't have any driveways at all. So it would make it difficult, in my opinion, to make it a blanket. But we can certainly add streets to that list per council's approval as we bring those forward to you next fall.
No,
Thank
but I
you.
think that's something that could be reevaluated, like you said, Mr. Brubaker. Any other questions from Mr. Brubaker? All right, very good. Finance Director Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually have some good news tonight for a change. On Friday of last week, we received our second two distributions from the Regional Income Tax Agency in February. This one was $830,357 higher than the second distribution from last February. So that puts us, that wiped out the deficit that we had from the first distribution and puts us $331,930 up for the month of February as compared to last February.
Very good.
Nice.
Encouraging. Very good.
Good news.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the Finance Director? Okay. Law Director, Mr. Oswald?
Maybe just real quick, now with everybody or a lot of people working at home, does that change the status on working in the city or out of the city? And that could be to Mr. Pileski. Thank you, Mr. President.
Through you, Mr. President, there's actually some, I believe a lawsuit's been filed in regards to this. So so far, I believe companies are withholding is if employees are still working in their workplace. But as we move forward, this could change, because if an employee is a different, like their resident city is different from their workplace city, they may have to start withholding for the resident city. So that, I think the preliminary report for Elyria is that it could help Elyria if that's the case, because I believe that we have quite a few people that live in Elyria and work in Cleveland
Right.
and elsewhere. So it'll be hard for the employers to track all that, but it's probably going to fall on them to withhold for the resident cities if it comes to that.
Sure. Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mr. Pulaski, I can speak to that. I work in Independence and they are still taking out as if I am going to work every day, even though I've been home for almost a year.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard that's the case, and it may have to go into the courts to be settled. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but again, it'll be pretty difficult for the employers to start withholding for resident cities, but I'm sure it could be done. So it could impact quite a few cities, but I'm hoping that it won't have a negative impact on Elyria.
Sure. Any other questions for the finance director? Thank you. Law Director Deary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm requesting that council go into strategic planning at the conclusion of tonight's meeting just for purposes of adjourning into executive session to discuss imminent litigation. I do not anticipate any action being taken.
Okay.
And I don't have anything further to report.
Okay. Any questions for Law Director Deary? No? Thank you, Ms. Deary. Elyria Police Department, Chief Whiteley.
And no report, Mr. President.
Elyria Fire Department, Chief Mack.
Through you, Mr. President, just want to let everybody know that we have filled the fire marshal's position. We promoted Captain Bill Galt to Assistant Chief. He is now the fire marshal and he has started his duties officially.
Okay.
And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Chief Mack? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Assistant Safety Service Director Firestein.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report tonight, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Firestein? No. Ms. Flanders.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. President, just a quick update from me tonight. Just want to let you all know, yesterday we had the first virtual town hall with the administration of 2021. We wanted to thank Health Commissioner Dave Covell for joining us and sharing details about COVID-19 in Elyria, as well as Pat Hoagland, who joined us from Brandsetter Carroll to provide details about the data from the recent Parks and Rec survey that concluded in November of 2020. If any residents or stakeholders missed it, you can check out the video and recording of the town hall at cityofelyria.org. It's the first thing under the announcements you'll see there. It's also on the city's YouTube channel, and we've shared it to the city's Facebook page as well. On the communication side, just wanted you all to know that we've been submitting, our print ads and sharing information on social and the website as it's available and relevant. And most notably, last week, we sent an e-newsletter for the month of February that included information about upcoming city and community events, relevant and general seasonal department reminders, senior news and resources, parks and recreation program pushes, general community news and resources, and hiring information. Of the people that received that email, 32.6% opened that email. The industry standard for kind of government municipalities is 28.7%. And as far as people that kind of clicked through and actually read the information, clicked on the links, we had a click-through rate of 23.4%, where the industry standard for government is 3.99. So we're seeing great engagement from the things that we're sending out to our community. Additionally, last week on the kind of communication and digital side, the Parks Board information was added to the city's website. That was finalized today. Additionally, this week, what you all might start seeing are some minor updates to the city's web pages for departments. Departments are starting to be engaged, it's really 4 departments at a time, to do an audit of their existing web page, the forms, and their communications practices to really make sure that web pages and the information we're sharing publicly is relevant and timely. So we'll be working with departments this week and moving forward to make sure the information is up to date. On the technology side, I just wanted to thank you all for your feedback on the ward map. I appreciate the feedback that we received. We anticipate both the ward and zoning map being ready for final review at the end of next week that have had all of your kind of revisions included. So thank you for your responses there.
Any questions for Ms. Flanders? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. I know that we live in a digital age and everything is done, you know, on email and Facebook and what have you. But there are so many residents that don't utilize that. How are we reaching them?
Great question. Through you, Mr. President. So we are still putting in ads in the paper, still on the radio, and still utilizing, you know, our TV channel and things like that. Just last week, we ran an ad in the Chronicle 4 days to provide information to residents about city happening. So we're very mindful of kind of the gaps in engagement that exist, are eager to utilize all channels, and are trying to spread how we communicate across platforms.
Thank you. Any other further questions? All right, very good. Ms. Calvert?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Calvert? All right. I think I've seen the Parks Director, Ms. Reardon. Who was in and out.
Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, yep. Thank you. Just a brief update. First, although this is all good news, this is the best news. We did get a recreation supervisor back in our department. So Nicole Edwards is back today, and her first day back with us, and that is very exciting. And she's looking forward to, she's already been digging in today. So that's great news. A few program updates. We opened up registration for our open volleyball for youth and adults. Youth we run on Friday night. So the first date of that will actually be February. Adults we run on Saturday nights, and that will be February 20th. 2 of our grade slots for the youth are already full for this week, or for, you know, the first week, but we'll do that on a weekly basis so people can sign up basically 1 week in advance. And that'll kind of just be a rolling registration for that. The rink full Friday. Session at Friday was full. The open skate, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, all full. Mondays, holiday open skate was full. Again,
Ms. Reardon?
another
Ms. Reardon?
the weekend there has been a little bit. Oh, yeah, you can't hear me.
You've been kind of coming in and out, the connection.
Okay. Any better?
Yep, try it. Go ahead and continue.
Is that
Yep.
okay? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The restroom project at East has been a little delayed due to the weather. So we're hoping to do a walkthrough on Friday and then have a punch list ready for the following week and kind of get that wrapped up. And then the East Park Playground project is moving along. We have 3 firms that will have their final designs to us by February 22nd. And then by the time we choose that, get contracts, they order stuff, we're hoping to have that completed by mid-May for everybody to use. So that's all I had. I apologize that I was in and out, but I'd be happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I guess, a lot of the program is kind of in full swing. The hockey program, how is that going? And then the open skate seems to be, you know, the numbers seem to be where you thought maybe they would be based on this COVID and that. So in your programming moving forward. What about personnel? I mean, I know you had Nicole coming back, but I mean, are we looking for, if everything is on the upswing on all this, and I know it's going to be a kind of wait to see how the enrollment is, but as far as, is that going to be enough personnel for you to maintain these programs?
I mean, if we want to be at the service level that we were at before, it would be my recommendation that we add back more full-time staff. I don't know if Ren, wants to speak to maybe what some of the plans are from the administration. My recommendation would be, to add the full-time staff back to get back to, the service level that we were at.
Right. Okay. Ms. Flanders, or I see Mr. Jesse got his hands up. Mr. Jesse?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, through you. Yeah, that's a great point. And I know our budget's going to be somewhat fluid this year, up one month, maybe down another, but particularly with the great news we got from Director Pileski, I think we need to hire some more full-time people for parks. We know there's a need. We know there's programming out there. We know that there's not enough people from Director Reardon's staff that used to be functioning. So I would love to see additional staff hired with a good search and finding people who are qualified, have the educational background and the experience to really, hit the ground running and can help her operate these programs the way they've been done for years.
Yep. Very good. Ms. Keys?
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to Mrs. Reardon. I've had a number of residents call me questioning why there are no senior programs at East Rec. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, at first there was some construction going on at East that is completed. Horizon is using East. I know that concern has been brought up to Assistant Safety Service Director Flanders and, her team. We did have a meeting this afternoon and I brought it back up again because we did have participants, from TAP that have asked even, up until last week. So that, has been brought up to the administration. So just kind of waiting for, the feedback from Ren and her team.
Ms. Flanders, are you prepared to answer that at this particular time, or are you still working through that?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Still working through that, but have definitely, taken that concern from residents. It also came up at the Parks and Rec board meeting on Thursday of last week of the desire for tax programming to potentially go back to some other locations. So now that Nicole is back on the Parks and Rec team, or talked to Director Reardon about this morning, and we'll kind of look into exploring if it's possible to kind of spread programming back out. We explored, what it looked like for things to happen on different days at one center versus others. So the discussion's happening. We're definitely taking in that feedback and hope to be responsive.
Okay. I think Ms. Davis, I'll get to Mr. Jesse and then Ms. Mitchell.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the park board, in hopes that's why we acquired Oakwood School, and I'm hoping that in the near future, that Oakwood can open up and we can have some senior programs there. So hopefully we do get the staff to get some to be able to open it up for the seniors in the area. Also, and we can even have volunteers to help us run that facility. I'm willing. And so I hope soon that we can get Oakwood up and running for the seniors. Maybe, soon as possible. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just as just to let Councilwoman Davis, Oakwood is not due to come into the city's possession until August. So that's the sort of time frame that you'd be looking at the very, very earliest. And then there'd be a process, obviously, for the city to designate it as a park. If that, continues to be what the intention would be. Obviously, I don't speak for you all. So that would be sort of the preliminary timeframe going forward.
Ms.
Right
Mitchell?
into fall, into summer.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Chair, through, Mr. President, through you to Ms. Reardon or Ms. Flanders. Our summer camps are very popular. We normally have a good bit of kids that attend, along with Safety Town and all of our other summer programming. Are we on track to do that? Or because of COVID, has that slowed down? I would think we would need to hire additional personnel to run the summer camps. Is that correct?
Yep. Thank you, through you, Mr. President. Yes, we have had discussions about summer camp, Safety Town. Right now, the discussion is that summer camps will be running through the mayor's office. Whether that changes or not, I'm not sure, but right now that is the plan. But yes, Safety Town will go. Summer programming will go, just depending on kind of where it's going through and things like that.
Mr. President, if I may, through you, why through the mayor's office and not through the parks? That's what the parks are for. Please help me understand.
Yep, absolutely. Ren, I will deflect to you to answer, that question.
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. So to our at least understanding, the Office of the Mayor and Safety Service Director planning the Reach and Rise element of summer camp programming is not atypical to how it's been in previous years. There's a portion of the programming that's been organized through the Office of the Mayor, which is typically the Reach and Rise, and other portions that are sports-based camps, like some of the cheerleading camps, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong here, but some of the basketball camps with the fire department, those are organized through the Parks and Rec department itself. It's definitely collaborative. It's not something that we're pulling up upstairs, and it's not going to be a collaborative process. We've worked with Director Reardon on what the themes will be, kind of the overall layout of what the summer could look like. This is an idea.
Mr. Jesse, I know you had your hand up, and I'll get to Mr. Tolet.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, through you. Yeah, and kind of dovetailing off what Mrs. Mitchell said, again, the very real need for us to hire additional trained education background, experienced staff. I'd also like to see more input from the park board. And I don't say that in a critical way. It's just I see the role of the park board as defined by our charter as being essential for the smooth operation of the parks and for the administration of the parks and for the direction of the parks. So I know we have park board members listening, and we certainly all on council support you, and we want to hear more from you about what you see as the needs and directions of the parks as we move forward out of this pandemic.
Tolet.
Through you, Mr. President, for Carrie. Have you started the process yet of hiring lifeguards or planning to hiring lifeguards for or setting up aquatic programs for the summer?
Thank
I know
you,
it's
through you,
early and we have a lot of snow.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. President. We have not actively started doing that. It's definitely on the radar. Probably within the next week or so, I will reach out to staff that was with us before, kind of get a gauge of how many of them will come back. But yeah, I mean, those emails and those posts will start going out here in the next week or two. I'm in contact with the gentleman who typically does our lifeguard certification course. So we're getting that on the schedule, especially this year. That's going to be huge because with the lapse of last year, there's going to be some people that are going to either need to renew, their certifications or start all over again, unfortunately, because they missed that summer. So that's, like I said, I've already been in contact with him to get him on our schedule. But yeah, we're, like I said, we're, about a week, 2 weeks away from, starting to get those people on board. Because if we don't grab them, they'll go to a different pool and they'll, find a job somewhere. So, yep, that's on the radar.
And I think this year, just because of COVID, there's going to be a real explosion in outdoor activities for the summer. And we need to be fired up and ready to roll. Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, one last question, Carrie or Ren, whomever can answer. Are we looking at doing summer baseball this year?
Yep, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, a lot of those, especially the outdoor programs, there's, I don't want to say every single one of them will go. I've had this conversation with Ren as far as, the capacity that we can provide with the personnel resources that we have. But yes, the idea is to do as many of those, especially outdoor activities, that we can, that we've done in the past, and move forward with those. There may be some modifications to them still. In fact, me and Nicole were talking about that today as far as Safety Town and maybe some possible modifications that we'll have to do with that program. But yeah, I don't see why other than the lack of staffing resources, why we wouldn't be able to do all of the outdoor activities that we've done in the past.
All right.
Thank you. Mr.
Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Carrie, a question and a comment. The question is, it came up earlier that the additional master plan that was contracted in the fall, did I hear correctly that those results have been analyzed?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Yeah, Mr. Hoagland shared some of that information at the town hall last night. I believe they got just about 800 surveys back. And now, obviously, without having the slides in front of me, I do remember he said that a lot of the, the feedback and stuff was pretty similar to what, was done before, with the top 4 things. And Ren, correct me if I'm wrong, but an outdoor aquatics facility, a dog park, and these are not in the right order, I apologize, trails, and an indoor aquatic facility were the top 4 that Mr. Hoagland pointed out, last night, as far as being the top 4 things that the participants of the survey wanted.
And so those were very, very similar to what we did 5 years ago with the really large master plan.
Yeah, without having the numbers in front of me, sorry, through you, Mr. President, without having the numbers in front of me, that is what Mr. Hoagland mentioned last night. Yeah.
Okay. And then my comment, I just want to thank you very much for being here. I know that you've had a very challenging time as we navigate through this virus and kind of putting the program back together. But I think I speak for all of my colleagues that we are very, very grateful that you're here, and we appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate the support.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Reardon. Ms. Flanders, did you want to comment in regards to the study that Mr. Hoagland from Branstetter Carroll was talking about? And maybe, is there a way that we can get the PowerPoint presentation? I know it's on the YouTube, but is there any type of paper that we can kind of look at and review? Is that distributed, or can we get that PDF?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'll work with Pat Hoagland and Branstetter Carroll to get a version of the results for you that's digestible. We have a document that kind of aggregates everything, but it's a few hundred pages long.
Oh.
So we can work on a simplified report for you all to see.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think it was a good discussion about it, because I think we know that the parks are important, and with Ms. Reardon leading the charge at that, and I think we want to be ahead of the game and everything, and the collaborative effort with Ms. Flanders and in the mayor's office, and trying to get this all together, because we want to be, leading the charge when it's all, I think what Mr. Tollett said is correct. When this thing explodes here in late spring and in the summer, we're going to have, programs for our kids and our seniors and everybody involved, because the vaccinations are going to take off, and we got to be there to welcome them back. So, all right, very good. Good discussion there. I think that was Engineer Schneider.
Yes, Mr. President. No report.
No report. Okay. Have I missed anybody? If anybody can help me with that, I think everyone's here. Okay. President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, community development. Item number 2, community development and finance. Item number 3, community development and finance. Item number 4, finance. Item number 5, finance. Item number 6, finance. Item number 7, finance. Item number 8, utilities. Item number 9, utilities. Items 10 through 13 received and placed on file at the clerk's office. Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
There are none.
Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
Yes, we have one, and just want to apologize to Mr. Bowens here. I'm going to read a letter from him tonight that, with COVID, we haven't been letting anybody join the meetings just because we thought we'd have too much noise and too much difficulty controlling it. So anyways, I just want to apologize to Mr. Bowens for that tonight. So I'm going to read his letter. He's got no topic here. And greetings to City Council and all representatives of the community. My name is Eric Bowens. I live at 1212 Lake Avenue on Elyria's west side. I attended Elyria City Schools and have been a part of the community service for many years now. I reached out to a few community leaders. I'll name who and what they represent in hopes to come up with a few points of interest we want to focus on improving with immediate attention from city officials. Point of interest 1, more effective use of south and west recreational centers after school hours and throughout the summer. I'll go into past experiences and details. Also, how other local organizations can help and or participate with programs and activities. Number 2, City of Elyria to be directly involved with youth job training programs, youth employment, and or supporting organizations. I'll name a variety of organizations confirmed to be interested in participating financially, resourcefully, and actively engaged. And 3, last but not least, African-American citizens want our stories told in regard to the advancements and some great accomplishments in our city. I'd like to highlight a few examples, and we are asking for the city to support cultural activities and ideas of the African-American community in Elyria. I'll go into more deep depth within my 3 minutes available. Thank you sincerely. If anything else is needed, please contact me ASP. I'll comply. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay. Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. A resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts to the Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any discussion
Question?
on the suspension? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2021-3, and that's all resolutions first reading.
Resolutions second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to Dominic D. Price and Courtney R. Price for Type A in-home child care at real property located at 108 Regency Court, Elyria, Ohio.
I declare this ordinance has its first reading. Public hearing is scheduled for Monday, March 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Zoom and live streamed.
Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance amending ordinances number 2020-170, known as the 2021 Temporary Appropriations Ordinance.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any discussion?
Question?
Question's been called on the suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-23. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and accept, if offered, the FY 2020 Fire Prevention and Safety Grant to be administered by the Elyria City Finance Department and the Elyria City Fire Department, and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, on the emergency. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-24. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and accept, if offered, the FY 2020 staffing for adequate fire and emergency response SAFER grant to be administered by the Elyria City Finance Department and the Elyria City Fire Department, and declare an emergency.
Mr. Gillette.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-25. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Environmental Systems Research Institute, Inc. for the Small Government Departmental Platform Program, and declare an emergency.
Mr. Gillette.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-26. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and accept, if offered, the Community and Litter Grant through the 2021 Recycling and Litter Prevention Program for the purchase of a 2021 Ford F-450 truck, a fabricated box for the truck bed, and a Model 250 XP brush bandit chipper for the Elyria Sanitation Department, and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
2021-27. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Lorain County Commissioners with a 3-year commitment to participate in the Lorain County Emergency Notification System, and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-28. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an enterprise zone agreement with Hydro Air, Inc. and Crane Company for exemption of real and personal property taxes within the Elyria Enterprise Zone created under ordinance number 91-71 and is amended in ordinance number 95-47.
Mr. Callahan,
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance number 2021-29. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to reduce the plan review fees and building permit fees for the construction projects for Hydro Air, Inc. and Crane Company.
Mr. Callahan,
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-30. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance establishing the Downtown Historic Redevelopment Grant Program.
Mr. Callahan,
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-31. And that's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinance's second reading.
There are none.
Ordinance's third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development requests the presence of the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Building Inspector, and Engineer on Monday, February 22nd, following the special council meeting. All items referred. Let's see, the Joint Community Development and Finance requests presence of the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, and Safety Service Director, and Engineer on 2/22. Following Community Development, all items referred. Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on 2/22/21. Following the Joint CD and Finance, all items referred. Utility Safety and Environment requests the presence of the Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on 2/24/21, 6 p.m. All items referred. In Strategic Planning requests the Mayor, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, and Solicitor on 2/22/21. Following a special council meeting at 6 p.m. All items referred. It's all committee calls.
Okay. If I could, Mr. Brubaker, are we prepared to present the budget on the 22nd?
Yes, Mr. President, the mayor and I worked with Mr. Farrell and Finance Director Pileski last week. And happy to say we came up with a balanced budget with much work from Mr. Pileski's office as well as the mayor's office and department heads. So Mr. Pileski, correct me if I'm wrong, but you should have that documents. I think Mr. Farrell was looking to get the budget out to you folks, to council members this week for review, so we can have a discussion at the next finance meeting.
Mr. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. Kevin, do you know, or Ted, do you know if we're going to see a specific outline of issue 6 funds, line by line, parks, police, capital?
As I understand it, through you, Mr. President, Mr. Jesse, and again, Mr. Plesky can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Farrell will have a detailed report like he has presented in the past of each one of those line items that was within issue 6 and then a total. So yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Plesky.
through you. Yeah, we should be able to get you all a document in your boxes probably by tomorrow or Thursday. The holdup has been Muni Court. We're still waiting, as of this afternoon, we are still waiting on the 2 judges to submit their budgets. But I think what we're gonna do, if we don't have them, we're gonna put numbers in for them. And then we can always change their budgets after they give them to us. But we should have you a document along with the issue 6 expenditures in your boxes tomorrow or Thursday.
Okay, very good. In regards to, I know that we've been kind of going back and forth, or maybe some discussions are limited about getting back into council chambers and where we're at with that. And, we're trying to ride this out. But I think, for finance, I did talk to some of those members. We would like to be in council chambers for that, because of the budget process instead of doing it on the Zoom. We'll be able to do Zoom, and that's okay. But I feel it's important to have that presentation in council chambers, in regard to the finance and moving forward with that. I just think it's pretty vital what's being presented. I feel more comfortable, I think others do, as far as from finance committee being in council chambers. So, and then those who want to Zoom in obviously can do that. So I just kind of wanted to let everybody know that. Miscellaneous and unfinished business? Anybody? Okay, and based on what, I guess at this particular time, with Mr. Henderson, I think we need to go make it a
Yes,
motion.
Mr. President.
I think at this particular time, Ms. Deary, if you could help us along here, going into strategic planning, and then,
Yes, through you, Mr. President, I would ask that you would adjourn the meeting, then we would begin strategic planning.
can I get a motion for adjournment?
And that would, I'm sorry, yes, and then strategic planning would begin in public. And then it would obviously take a roll call vote to go into executive session.
Can I get a
I
motion?
move that we adjourn, Mr. President.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. At this time, we're going to make a motion to go into strategic planning and go into executive session. Can I get it for litigation purposes with no action being taken?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. Council President, roll call
Do we
vote.
have to go roll call, Mr.
Roll
President?
call, roll
Yes.
call vote.
Sir. Mr. Callahan,
Aye.
Mr. Sarah,
Aye.
Mr. Oswald,
Aye.
Mr. Baird,
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Tolet,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons. Mrs. Simmons. Mrs.
She's
Davis.
saying aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Mrs. Keys,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Stewart,
Aye.
all ayes.
So at this particular time, Ms. Deary, as far as having, I see the engineer Schneider, Assistant Law Director Bruning.
Yeah.
and the Chief.
Mr. Brubaker, you don't want to make assumptions, but, and I understand it is your birthday, but if you wish to join us on behalf of the mayor. And I would say all the council members.
Right.
And I don't know that
Chief Whiteley.
we would need anybody else other than our, well, we'll wait till Corey takes us off the YouTube.
All right, I will let you know when we,
Okay,
I'll let you know when we stop streaming. Is it, so I got the okay to stop the stream?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.